You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholics, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and that charm, just like Jim. It's more than life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more than life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, buy some bottles, impress them girls. It's more than life.
Fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And who dat? And we got some main course for you. I'm sure everyone wants to hear my thoughts on the preseason game and what I thought of the three quarterbacks and some of the running backs and maybe even some of the defense. But the first thing I need to go over some corresponding signings, due to injuries and maybe even performances in the preseason game. And also, this is something I forgot to mention on the last podcast, was that the last podcast was actually my 100th podcast, my 100th show. So I forgot to mention that. So, we're laying them down. We're putting out those podcasts for everyone to see. And let's go for 100 more. That's what I'm looking to do. So first thing, let's just get into some of those corresponding moves. So can I get a menu? And the first one is it's Jalen Smith. He was signed a little while back. I'm trying to think. I think that was like last Thursday, so almost a week ago, and that would have been kind of at the time would have definitely been a corresponding move due to the Demario Davis injury. And luckily, Demario Davis was actually back at practice, and that was this Tuesday. He wasn't doing any team activities or 7-on-7. He was just kind of at practice, kind of working off to the side. But that's a good sign, seeing that he's back with a little less than 3 weeks before the regular season. So that's really good news. I was excited to see that. And my thoughts on Jalen Smith is that I thought he was pretty much out of the league, was going to be out of the league after he was let go from the Cowboys, because his production really fell off due to the knee injury, the devastating knee injury that he had in the bowl game leading up to the draft that he was going to get drafted in. But then those first 3 or 4 years with the Cowboys, he looked actually pretty good, But then it seemed kind of like in his last season with them, it looked like he just kind of lost a bit of a step. And after they released him, I thought he was done. I was surprised to see some other teams pick him up. And I think he was with the New York Jets last year and actually put up decent numbers. Do I think could be a replacement for Demario Davis? Probably not. And I was looking at Rashaan Evans and Anthony Barr. I kind of had those guys ahead of him. Definitely would have preferred Rashaan Evans because he's older. He's about the same age and doesn't have the history of like knee injuries. But then I kind of look at Anthony Barr and Jalen Smith kind of as the same. They're kind of an equal to me because Jalen Smith, he's 27, 28 years old. But then you got Anthony Barr, who's 31 years old. So, taking into account the knee injury and the age difference, I think they're basically a similar signing. But I always want to go with the younger player, at least. And then the other corresponding signing is the Darrell Williams, the ex-LSU player, the former LSU player. And that's obviously a signing due to Kendra Miller's injury. It looks as if he sprained his already previously injured knee. And I guess results on that and imaging on that is that it's very, very minor. And I was surprised to hear that Dennis Allen said yesterday that he could possibly play in the game against the Chargers. But I seriously doubt that happens. But besides him being injured, I just really wasn't all that impressed by Kendra Miller. He had what 4 carries for just 5 yards and a long of 2. And let's see if he had a catch in this game. Yeah, and he had one catch for 1 yard. So even before he got hurt, it's not like he was lighting it up or anything. And that's not really what I expect Williams to come in here and do either. He's a bit of an older player. I think he may have been drafted in the same, once again, another running back that was drafted in the same draft as Alvin Kamara, the 2017. He was either drafted in 2017 or 2018 draft because he's like the same age as Alvin Kamara. He's 28 years old. And he's expected to wear number 34, which is a number that he wore at LSU. But I think this is just a depth signing and just to kind of see how Kendra Miller progresses. But also other injury news, it seems like every practice, every game, I think they got out of the game against the Chiefs pretty much unscathed. But then, of course, their first practice back on Tuesday, Taysom Hill came up with an oblique injury, which those can be tricky. That's kind of a muscle some people don't really think about, but it's like the muscle right under your underarm there. And then I guess Cesar Ruiz already had kind of banged up his shoulder a little bit in the game against the Chiefs, and I guess it flared up again on Tuesday. So hopefully those are minor. I think that's what Dennis Allen has said for the most part, that they're just minor injuries. But man, just these. I guess I can't complain. Saints fans and Hoodats can't complain too much that there are a lot of injuries and stuff happening in training camp, but none of them have been like season-ending injuries to like key contributors that are players that are going to be key contributors on this team. Most of the ones that have gotten hurt have been like Benjamin and guys that are going to be like third, fourth string or just practice squad. So far, luckily, the Saints are having little ticky-tack injuries here and there to some of their star players and key contributors, but none of them have been season enders or ones that have put them out for like the majority of the season, which that's lucky. That's lucky. But those are some of the corresponding moves that they've made due to injuries and maybe lack of production. But let's get into the preseason game against the Chiefs. So that was Sunday. Today is Wednesday, so it's been a couple days. Let's kind of let it marinate. And I've actually watched the game twice. When I watched the game the first time, it actually had the Saints broadcast team. And then the second time I watched it, it was actually the Chiefs broadcast team. So I've watched the game twice and kind of got the perspective of both commentators, announcers in the game. And really, when it's the Saints commentators, they don't really say much about the Chiefs players. And when it's the Chiefs announcers, they don't really say anything about the Saints players, whether they make a good play or a bad play or not. They don't really have anything to say with them. But that's understandable because they probably really don't know much about either opposing team that they're announcing for. But let's get into this right now. So the first drive was just amazing. Derek Carr was 6 for 8 for 70 yards and a touchdown. And one of the incompletions was actually a drop early on by Chris Olave. It was just kind of a little out route, and I don't know, just had a lack of concentration. He was looking to turn upfield before he caught it. It's just a drop. So I mean, it should be 6 for 7 or a 7 for 8 is what it should be. But he looked great, having the little dump off passes, getting Alvin Kamara involved in the receiving game, which you just love to see that. And man, with how good Alvin Kamara looked in the receiving game, man, it makes it kind of hurt a little. It kind of twists that knife a little bit more that he's going to be out the first 3 games, because Alvin Kamara looked amazing. He had that burst, had that ability to catch the ball with the soft hands, and looked good in the running game because he had it's a good average, I guess. It's close to a 5-yard average, but nothing to blow you away. But he had 3 carries for 14 yards, and most of it came on just, I'm trying to think if that was his first or his second run in the game. He had a 12-yard run. And then with the receiving yards, he had 2 catches for 21 yards, 2 targets, so he caught all of his targets. And the second reception he had was a beautiful 17-yard long screen pass that basically set them up to get the touchdown, which the touchdown came like out of all the players they have. Michael Thomas and Juwan Johnson, who was lighting it up, and even Michael Thomas had one receiving. With all those players, you got Foster Monroe and Chris Olave, and who ends up capping off the drive for the offensive starters? It's Keith Kirkwood. I mean, you could go back 3 or 4 years ago, and Keith Kirkwood was playing up with the Saints, and he was catching some passes from Drew Brees and looked like a potential, a prospect, a young prospect for the Saints. But then I guess during that off season after he went to the Carolina Panthers and really didn't do much. But it's just surprising to see Kirkwood catch I guess he had 1 target for one catch off of 1 target and had the 4-yard touchdown pass. But hey, it's good to see as many contributors as possible in this game and just preseason in general, because you can never have enough depth. And obviously Keith Kirkwood, he knows the system. So yeah, they just couldn't look any better, honestly. And then the defense on the only drive that Patrick Mahomes played in, that they got a 3 and out. They looked good. The run defense looked a lot better. You had Colin Saunders out there making plays, trying to making tackles in the backfield and helping really stuff that middle of that the offensive line, and they tried to go for it on a 4th and 1 and got stuffed. So that was a big issue with the Saints last year, was the fact that they couldn't stop the run. They got gashed a lot in games last year trying to stop the run, but they look good in this game. All right, so we talked about Derek Carr and some of his drives. Let's get into Jameis Winston now. So Jameis Winston, I mean, numbers wise, he wasn't bad, but he got sacked 3 times. That's really the big negative on him, was the 3 sacks for 28-yard loss. Sometimes he just kind of looks like a statue back there when he gets pressure up the middle and around him, and he just doesn't have like great pocket awareness. He just is kind of like a statue sometimes back there. But I mean, besides that, his numbers were good. He was 11 for 13 for 92 yards and a touchdown, and he was his main target on his scoring drive was A.T. Perry. I'm trying to remember if all of his receptions came off of Jameis Winston passes. Most of them did. I definitely know that. But A.T. Perry, he was lighting it up. The 6th-round pick, he looked great with I think pretty sure it was 6 targets and 6 catches for 71 yards and a touchdown. And that touchdown came off of like a 29-yard pass, and he caught it right over the defender, turned around and slammed the ball on the goal line. And honestly, I got like visions and flashbacks of the Dez Bryant caught it game in the playoffs, where he had almost an identical play where he caught the pass and falling down and slamming the ball on the goal line after making a football move. And really, when I first saw it live, I thought it wasn't a catch, but the catch rule changes every year, so it counted as one. It was a catch and it was a touchdown. And man, I would say player of the game, player of the game or rookie of the game. I think you definitely got to give it to A.T. Perry, because he showed out and showed his ability to use that 6'5", 205-pound frame. Like he looked good. And so that's pretty much where all of Jameis Winston's production came from, was just passes to A.T. Perry, and also after the touchdown drive, the first touchdown drive or scoring drive by Jameis Winston, had them up 14 points, and then going on their next drive to get the 3 points to go up to 17-0. There was Jimmy Graham caught a pass for 10 yards, and the Superdome went crazy. So it's exciting having flashbacks of teams from 2017, 2018, or I guess if I'm thinking 2017, I'm thinking more of Keith Kirkwood, but having flashbacks of 2010 to 2014 with Jimmy Graham out there catching passes, and it was a 1 yard catch for 10 yards, and he looked like he was trying to juke a defender, but it was still, it didn't get too far after the catch, but still, it's great to see Jimmy Graham back out there. All right, and we went over some of the running backs that played. So Kendra Miller, he mostly played in the first half, and maybe I'm trying to think if he was hurt by the time the third quarter rolled around. I don't even really remember or saw the play that he was hurt on, or the announcers even talking about him going in the blue tent to get evaluated. But I saw, like, on Twitter from Saints media teams talking about how he went in the blue tent and got evaluated, and then went back to the locker room. Didn't really show any kind of limp or injury when doing that. So maybe that's a good thing. Some people say that's a good sign, but sometimes I've seen players walk and look perfectly fine, and next thing you know, they're torn ACL. And then I've seen players walking like their leg is broken, and then next thing you know, it was something minor. So you really can't go off of things like that to decide whether a player's injured or not. But I guess no limp is a better sign than a severe limp, even though I've seen it go both ways. All right, so that's pretty much what happened in the first quarter with Derek Carr's first touchdown drive and a couple drives by Jameis Winston. So that's what you saw Jameis Winston finish out the first half. So then we got a pretty heavy dose of Jake Haener in the second half, and his numbers, well, nothing that's going to blow you away, but they're not bad either. And I like the way that he battled back because he was 10 for 17 for 105 yards and a touchdown, but then had that interception, and you could argue that was the wide receiver's fault on that play, and I'm talking about James Washington, who also in other corresponding moves because of the Darrell. You could say it was because of the Darrell Williams signing that he's been released, but you could also say it was because of his performance in the preseason game, because it was kind of a back shoulder throw where Jake Haener was wanting James Washington to come back to the football, and he didn't stack his receiver when trying to make the catch on the ball, and the defensive back just jumped right in front of him and got the interception from Jake Haener. But you could definitely, I guess if you're watching the Saints broadcast, you could see where Drew Brees said he saw what Jake Haener was looking for and what he's seen, and that it was just kind of a miscommunication between him and James Washington, the receiver. But James Washington, he had 2 targets and no catches, no yards, obviously. And the other catch, the other target and pass that was thrown to him was like an incomplete, was a drop, actually. So, it's a corresponding move to be able to get Darrell Williams in the building, but I think it was also a performance issue as well, because he didn't look good. He didn't help the young quarterback, Jake Haener, in this game, because he had the drop and then he had the route that led to the interception. But Jake Haener, he continued to play. He came back. He came back from that, and that's something you want to see wide receiver or young quarterback do, is come back and continue to sling the ball even after making a mistake early on in their career. But so Kendra Miller, he went out with an injury, and then most of your touches and touches from running back and even receiving back all came from Ellis Merriweather, which I never even heard of him before Sunday. I didn't even know Ellis Merriweather was even on the team, but he put up okay numbers. I think his per carry average is less than 3 yards per carry, but some of the runs he looked like hard runs, hard nosed runs, sticking it in there to pick up a couple of yards. But he was only 9 for 24, but he made some crucial catches on the touchdown drive at the end of the game for Jake Haener. And let's see, for yeah, he had two catches for 17 yards, and he had the touchdown at the end of the game. So he had 3 targets and the two catches for 17 yards, and I think it was yeah, the one that set him up to get the touchdown was a 15-yard 15, his long of 15, and then he had the little waggle play out of the backfield and just pretty much walked into the end zone on that. So even though Kendra Miller is down and they're having to sign Darrell Williams, you got to be some encouragement, that got another young rookie that looked decent, looked good. But this game was, and actually for a preseason game, it was really exciting, especially with how the Saints started the game 17-0, and then towards the end of the second half and kind of the end of the second half, and then the majority of the third quarter, their offense, their defense was getting lit up. Like they were winning on first and second down, and they got the Chiefs in third and long a couple times, and then they would just get roasted by a wide open receiver or a defensive player not being able to make the tackle. But they continued to play, and towards the end of the game, it was just a one-scored game. And like I mentioned, Jake Haener led them right down the field to score a touchdown. And that they just kicked the field goal there, it would have been 24-24, and there's no overtime in preseason. So, I understand why Dennis Allen tried to go for it to take the lead at that point in the game, because there was only about a minute and 26 seconds or 20 seconds. And that play, the 2-point conversion play, was just a disaster. Everyone moved and hiked the ball besides Jake Haener. And I was a little surprised that wasn't called like a pre-snap penalty and just called a false start, but it was considered a legal formation, and that they actually snapped it, because I actually thought it was just would have been considered a false start, and Saints would have got backed up 5 yards to try the 2-point conversion, but that's not what happened. And talking turnovers on defense earlier in the game, see Umada. Let's see, find him here. Hugo Amadi had an interception earlier in the game. I think that was in the second quarter, kind of towards the end of the second quarter. He had an interception off of a tip pass by Alontae Taylor. And then the big time play that won them in the game, you thought with just a minute and 20 seconds, a minute and 26 seconds at the end of the game, and being down by 1 point, that the game was pretty much over, and Dennis Allen and the Saints, they didn't even attempt a onside kick, which seemed a little odd. But then once the Chiefs got the ball and were just trying to run out the clock, they still called their timeouts, and probably would have been in the better interest of the team for the Chiefs. For the Chiefs, it probably been better interest for them to just run it again on third down. But for some reason, they thought they had a slick screen pass that could get them a first down or help run off some more clock, and it got intercepted by Kyle Phillips, the big guy. Everyone wants to see big guy touchdowns, big guy interceptions, big guy catches, and that's what you got to see. You got to see Kyle Phillips basically put the nail in the Chiefs' coffin, and that set them up for a pretty short field goal that that was executed perfectly at the end of the game, because that can be kind of tricky, because they didn't have any timeouts any of them at the left at that point. So the clock was running while they were setting up to kick the field goal. And Blake Grupe, he did good hitting that 31-yard field goal, game-winning field goal with the time ticking down. So that was perfectly executed. That's something you want to see. And just talking kickers, Will Lutz looked good as well. He didn't. Neither one of them had to kick anything over 40 yards because Will Lutz was 1 for 1 for a 36-yard field goal and had the two extra points earlier in the first half. But for a preseason game, it was really exciting with the way it ended and seeing the Saints have a comeback win, and just over the history of the Saints, at least while I've been a fan of them, they don't usually win their preseason games. So it's nice to see them get a preseason game win. And people always talk about, whichever team wins and looks good, it's just preseason. But whichever team looks bad, it's like, well, they're terrible. That you should start to worry. So even when you win, you can't win a preseason. But it was an exciting game all around, and I think anyone that's a fan of the Saints, a Hoodats, should be encouraged with how the Saints looked against the World Championship Chiefs defense and against the World Championship offense of the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. So I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged, and I'm just ready for the next game against the Chargers. But anyways, I think that's all I have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?